Thanks to Sora and Nazanin. Let's go straight to our top story this hour. 5 Just Stop Oil protesters were arrested after they stormed the stage at the West End production of Les Miserables last night. Yikes, so much for the show must go on. As you can see, the cast tried to continue before the music stopped and they were rushed backstage, leaving angry audience members booing and heckling the activists. Joining me now, Chloe Naldrett from Just Stop Oil and Deputy Editor of The Stage, Matt Hemley, joins me in the studio. Hello there. Let's talk to Chloe first. Chloe, what is the point of this, please?
Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for having me on today. I just want to start by saying I'm a mother of two young children, and I'm also a theatre producer. I've had a 22-year career in the theatre industry. So, you know, I have very complex feelings about what happened last night. But I wanted to actually start by saying it's a real shame that in your news headlines just now, there was no space to mention the fact that we've just had the hottest September that has ever been recorded on the planet.
Well, in fairness to TalkTV, Chloe, we've mentioned it repeatedly. We've mentioned it dozens of times. I'm sure that I've mentioned it on this show. It's been mentioned throughout broadcasts on the show. We didn't mention it today because we've already mentioned it.
Gobsmackingly bananas. They've run out of words for what's happening. The temperatures are off the charts.
Right. We know that. It's been reported in every paper. As I say, we've covered it extensively on the station. But where is the link between the hottest September on record and a whole audience of disappointed theatre goers and the orchestra and the actors and the makeup people and the costume designers and all the people who work so hard as a theatre producer yourself, you know, to produce this all-encompassing, emotionally engulfing, absolutely beguiling production that people have adored for years and years and effectively nuking it, destroying the illusion, destroying the dramatic tension, destroying the enjoyment. How does that improve the climate?
Well, you can see there, Vanessa, that the moment that they took action is the moment in the play where the students in Paris in 1832 calling on the people to rise up in revolution against a government which cannot rule in their best interests. Now, does that sound familiar to anybody? So in the play, we've got a cost of living crisis, which means that people are stealing food for children. They're going to desperate extremes in order to be able to support their families. In this country right now, we've got what's been called an epidemic of shoplifting, and we've got baby milk powder held with security tags in supermarkets because people in this country are desperate. And we've got a government that cannot act in the best interest of its people. We've got a government that's licensing 100 new oil and gas fields in the North Sea, while we're being told by the United Nations, by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, by the World Health Organization, by the International Energy Agency, that we simply cannot have any new fossil fuel projects. And our government has rowed back, given up, let's say, on net zero, and it is pursuing new fossil fuel projects. So the students taking action last night are as desperate as some of the characters in the play for their lives.
Let's bring it. You had a good chance to explain. Let's bring in Matt Hemley, Deputy Editor of The Stage. I mean, you know, Chloe's making some pretty nifty comparisons, actually, isn't she, with the content of Les Miserables, the revolution, people really in absolutely dire straits in a cost of living crisis. Is that, therefore, a valid way of protesting, to effectively hijack last night's production of Les Miserables?
I mean, I think it's one of many that we've seen across, you know, we've seen roads, we've seen museums, art galleries. It was only a matter of time, I guess, before theatre had its moment. And if you're going to do a protest, then Les Mis is probably, as she says, is the right show to do it because the message has the parallels.
Yes, but does that mean you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, you're saying if you're going to do it, you might as well choose Les Mis. OK, maybe not La Cage aux Folles or maybe not Oliver, but is it the right thing to do? It's the suspension of disbelief has to be suspended, and the whole point of theatre is the suspension of disbelief. You've ruined the illusion, you've ruined the whole thing, and also the other thing you might say is that people who can afford to buy a ticket for a West End show, minimum price about 47 quid per head, maximum price about 150 upwards, £200 on Saturday night. They're not necessarily the people, you know, who are starving or the people who are stealing baby milk from the supermarket, are they?
They're not, but look at the column inches it's got and the amount of publicity it's got. People are talking, and I guess that's the point of the protest. You make a good point about ticket prices, and the people there have come to enjoy their evening, but I think it's been really interesting watching how it's unfolded on social media, actually, that even people in the theatre industry are divided over whether this was the right thing to do or not the right thing to do. It's caused a division within the industry itself.
And what about you? I mean, you're here representing yourself. You don't have to be politically neutral, do you? What do you think?
I mean, I understand. I'm not just being diplomatic. I understand both sides. I understand the cause and what Just Stop Oil is fighting for. I also understand the discontent and the upset of an audience who have come to see a show, planned a night out maybe for some months because it's so expensive, and you've had a meal and you maybe booked your trains, and then all of that's ruined. They weren't able to continue the production.
They weren't. That was the end.
No, that was the end. So 9 o'clock it came down.
Just to explain why they couldn't just go back and do the rest of it?
Well, I think they had padlocked themselves to the stage. I guess it was the protesters padlocked themselves to the stage.
Right.
It was too risky to carry on. You know, you've evacuated the whole theatre, and I think there comes a point where the producers have to just say, we can't feasibly do this. There's, you know, there's curfews and things like that. If you carried on rolling on until the night, you'd be there all hours in the mornings.
I mean, you know, Chloe, it's quite clear that you know, the column inches have been achieved. Here you are on this programme talking about it. If you hadn't done it, you wouldn't be. On the other hand, I would imagine, and I've interviewed so many people over the last however many months who've been caught up in Just Stop Oil protests of all different kinds, saying, oh, my God, you know, all I was doing was taking my grandma to the theatre for a birthday. I can't do anything about climate change. I'm doing my best. You know, I use a wooden toothbrush, try not to, you know, use plastic more than, you know, use single-use plastic. I'm doing my best. I don't know what else she wants me to do. All I was doing was spending my hard-earned money in a cost of living crisis to try to have a good evening out and support the theatre. And let's face it, theatres are struggling after COVID. The habit of going out to that kind of thing has never quite reignited in the way it used to. You know, what good has it done? Yes, there are column inches, but will they change anything? Probably not.
Well, with respect, Vanessa, anyone who says to themselves, well, I'm doing my recycling, I'm using a wooden toothbrush, I'm trying to save plastic, those things have nothing to do with climate change. They have absolutely no contribution to make to the fact that our government is licensing new oil and gas fields. If you really want to do your bit, you have to come and join us, or you have to get involved in protesting, because really the show can't go on anymore, you know. And as they say in the film, in the musical, it's time for us to decide who we are. Are we going to sit back and let a government destroy everything that we love? Now, and that includes going to the theatre, that includes going out for entertainment, it includes our love of sport, it includes our, you know, getting on the roads to see our family. Everything that we love is at stake. We're talking about, you know, mass breadbasket failures. That means people are going to starve. We're talking about the fact that there's not going to be enough fresh water. We're talking about the fact that floods and wildfires and droughts and hurricanes are rendering parts of our world unsafe to live in. So we're talking about refugee crises on a scale that we've never experienced before.
So explain to me, Chloe, joining the dots. No, but joining the dots for people. Listen, you can't just talk you cannot talk unstopped. You have to stop when I ask you a question. That's how it works. Because I have no idea how long you're going to talk for. So at some point I have to interrupt you. That's my job. I have to, or I can't ask you anything. You just talk, and you don't get the chance to respond to any questions. OK, so let's do what's meant to happen here, which is I ask you a question and eventually you stop talking and give me a chance to do so. So where are the dots joined between people sitting at the theatre last night, or even people like me who are reporting on what's happened, people who are reading about it in the papers, and the kind of change that you want? What do you want people to do? What is supposed to happen?
Well, of course, what I would say is we want people to come and get involved in Just Stop Oil, because the more of us there are on the streets calling for our government to take real action on the climate emergency, the quicker it will happen. So the quicker people get behind this campaign and show the government that we will not sit back while they sign our death warrants, the faster that will happen. And we have to have that conversation in every possible sphere of our social lives and our professional lives, because it is going to affect every single part of our lives.
And let me bring Matt back into this. Your take on this, your take on the way in which it's happening, the effect on people of these kind of protests? Maybe you simply agree. Maybe you think, yeah, we really do need to start the revolution. She's absolutely right. We can't sit tight and complacently waiting for this to happen to us without trying to do something to stop it.
I mean, I do worry about the future of the planet, like I think most conscious people do, and I have a child who I want to grow up in a society world that's going to be able to provide for her, and, you know, will it be safe and somewhere that she can actually live. I don't think the people in that theatre last night will be joining the cause, but I think the message is out. I think it's really interesting that Chloe is a theatre producer, and as I said at the start, I don't think she's alone. I think what's been demonstrated from this protest is the amount of people in the industry who are actually saying, do you know what? Fair play, because if they don't do it, who's going to do it? And if this, we'll probably look back in many years to come and say this was the start. Like, people have compared it to like the suffragette movement and stuff like that. People would have rolled their eyes or made comparisons at the time, said, oh, this is ridiculous, but look what it achieved. So
yes, and when you hear Chloe very eloquently, may I add, you know, expressing this tremendous urgency, she's using phrases like death warrant, there's not going to be enough water, all the most terrifying prospects anyone could ever imagine that sound as if, you know, we're marching, sleepwalking to our deaths effectively. Do you agree? Do you think that her urgency is ramped up and too much? Or do you think she's absolutely right that we're running out of time in this acute manner?
I mean, I probably agree that...
You agree?
I do. I mean, I think I'm sympathetic to the causes. I'm not saying I would go to these extremes, but I understand what the world's facing. So,
but some people might think if you're sympathetic and you agree, how can you not, as you say, go to these extremes? Because this is extreme. And if it's this extreme and you agree that it is, how can you do anything but what Chloe's doing?
I explained when I agreed to come on that I'm a news reporter, so I'm impartial when I write the news. I'm not, you know, I don't have an opinion. I just present the news to our readers. All right. So that's...
So you present the news of the fact that this happened without giving an opinion.
Yeah. And we have opinion and columnists in the paper. It's not my job to pass opinion. Okay. It's my job to tell people what happened. All right.
And so, but what happened is pretty basic, isn't it? As far as telling people what happened on this programme right now, we all know what happened, don't we?
Yeah. I don't. Well, so what was I asked on for then?
I don't know. I thought because you were the deputy editor of The Stage, you would have very strong views about, you know, the costs of production, the costs of tickets.
You haven't asked me about that, to be fair.
Well, I asked you about what your thoughts are on this having happened.
Well, and I told you.
And by and large, you're pretty much in agreement that this is a very important cause.
I'm sympathetic to. I've actually said both sides. I understand that this cause, and I understand why they're doing it. Yes. I also understand why people are upset that it's happened on a night out when they've spent hundreds of pounds to go to the theatre. Right. I can see both sides of the argument. I'm not one side. You're not coming down on one side or another. No, fine. And Chloe, finally, are we going to find more of this kind of protest? Are you going to find that the theatre is a pretty convenient place for doing this kind of thing? Or have we had art galleries, we've had Rhodes, we've had House of Commons, we've had all sorts of places? This is going to be a one-off theatrical extravaganza that we're not going to see again on the stage at the West End.
Well, Vanessa, I'm a spokesperson. I can't comment on what's coming up. I simply don't know. I knew about this at the same time as everybody else. What I would just like to say to both of you, actually, is that it's incumbent upon all of us to do what we can, both as individuals and within our professional responsibilities. Now, you know, I'm sitting here as an individual who's a supporter of Just Stop Oil, and also as a theatre producer, saying, you know, this is what we've got to do, because it's absolutely imperative that we're having these conversations and we're talking about this issue, and we're not doing business as usual to carry on, because there can be no business as usual until our lives and our futures are secure. And the other thing I really want to say to my colleagues in the theatre industry is that, you know, cultural institutions, artists, we exist to reflect society back at itself. That's our job. That's our job as artists, and that's our job as people who work in the creative industries. So it's really important that we are reflecting back at society right now the urgent situation that we're in. And my final words, I suppose, are to say that Just Stop Oil will be marching again, and we encourage everyone to come and join us from October the 29th.
I suppose some people might think that if you want to reflect society back at society and you want to have a Just Stop Oil the musical or Just Stop Oil the production, then it's up to you to write it, choreograph it and possibly produce it, rather than hijack somebody else's production. I appreciate you joining me, Chloe. Thank you very much indeed. Matt, thanks for coming in. Coming up after the break, Britain's a nanny state, is it? Rishi Sunak is accused of treating us all like children after announcing a ban on smoking. I'm Vanessa